Heredity and environment. Are you the same person today as you were on the day you were born? The answer is both yes and no. Yes, because you have the same genetic makeup today as you did at birth. But the answer is also no. For the last 12 years or so, you have been developing in many ways. Your appearance has changed, your personality traits are more distinct, and you have had other countless experiences at home, at school, and with friends. You have come a long way, and you still have quite a distance to go to reach maturity. Heredity. At the moment of conception, each person receives a complete set of genetic information needed to become a unique human being. Half of this information is in the nucleus of the mother's ovum, and the other half is in the nucleus of the father's sperm cell. These two sets of genetic information become one. The information in the cell's nucleus is contained in its DNA. Chromosomes are bundles of DNA strands inside each cell, and along each chromosome are tiny chemical structures which are part of the DNA and are called genes. Each gene contains a specific piece of information that a person inherits at the time of conception. Everyone has at least 2 genes for each physical trait, one from the mother and one from the father. But most physical characteristics, like eye and skin color, height, and muscular strength, are determined by a number of genes. There are, however, a few physical traits that are a result of only 2 genes, one from each parent. Cleft chin, dimples, and type of earlobe are examples, but the 2 genes responsible for each of these characteristics may not be identical. Slightly different forms of the same genes are called alleles. Hand clasping. Clasp your hands together. Which thumb is on top, the right or the left? Now try and do it with the other thumb on top, and you'll discover that it feels quite strange. This is an example of a trait controlled by just 2 genes. One version of the genes is the dominant allele, and the other is recessive. If you clasp your hand with your left thumb on top, you inherited a dominant allele for this trait from at least one of your parents. If you clasp your hands together with your right thumb on top, you must have inherited a recessive allele from both your parents. Whenever there is a pair of alleles, one dominant and one recessive, the dominant one will be expressed. Here's how it works. So this is an example of the hand clasping. The HC is the dominant one, and the blue HC, the lowercase, is a recessive gene. So if both your parents give you the dominant gene, you'll be dominant. If one gives you the dominant and one the recessive, you'll be dominant. But if you get both recessive, then you'll be recessive. So the dominant one here was left hand on top, I believe. Right thumb on top was recessive. So if both your parents clasp their hands with the right thumb on top, then you'll get it. But if one parent clasps it with the left thumb on top, then you'll get the left thumb on top, the dominant one. Heredity involves much more than physical characteristics. It also has some influence on personality and talents. Some people tend to be shy or impulsive. Some people have the potential to be a musician or a mathematician. This is different from physical traits. People don't tend to have red hair or brown eyes. They either have red hair and brown eyes or they don't. These are fixed characteristics. A talent for music or mathematics is not a guarantee that the person will develop that talent. It's a maybe, a future possibility. In the same way, an inherited personality trait like shyness or impulsiveness is not a fixed characteristic, but a tendency that may change somewhat as the person grows up. But important as heredity is, it is only part of the story. Environment. Anything that is outside of you and has an effect on you is part of your environment. So, from the moment of your conception, you have lived in an environment. Since environment includes many elements, it is useful to divide it into 2 categories: physical environment and social environment. Physical environment. The first physical environment for each person is the uterus. For this reason, pregnant women need to get lots of rest, eat nourishing foods, and avoid alcohol, cigarettes, and unnecessary x-rays and drugs. Prenatal care from a doctor or midwife is also important. After birth, the physical environment each person has so many features that it is impossible to name all of them. Food, weather, music, and even the colors of the wall of a room are just a few examples. Long rainy periods make many people feel depressed and tired. Physical environments that are gloomy, crowded, or unsafe can have a negative impact on emotional and physical health. Music in the environment. In 1998, the TTC in Toronto began to play classical music over the station loudspeakers to stop teenagers from hanging around in the subway stations. They thought teenagers would dislike the music so much they would leave the stations quickly because of the unappealing environment. This approach has been tried in other countries too. In London, England, the music of Mozart is reported to be the most effective at reducing loitering at subway stations. Maybe Mozart is good for you. In 1997, scientists performed an experiment that indicated after listening to Mozart, listeners' IQ ratings increased by 8 or 9 points. Heredity and environment come together in one unique person and interact with each other. Interact means that heredity and environment affect each other. Asthma is a good example. A number of genes associated with asthma have been identified, but physical environment also plays a big part in asthma attacks. Naomi has had asthma attacks since she was 2 years old. The main features of her physical environment that cause attacks are dust, cat dander, and very cold air. Naomi can't change her gene, but she and her family made some changes in her physical environment. No furry pets, and ride to school on the coldest winter days. The first environment. In this book, The Secret Life of the Unborn Child, Dr. Thomas Verney tells a story about a man who could never understand why the cello lining from certain pieces of music, seemed so familiar to him. When he mentioned this to his mother, she was able to explain it. His mother was a cellist, and the musical scores that were so familiar to him were those she had practiced while she was pregnant with him. As we learn more about the development of the unborn child, we discover new facts about the uterus. It is not quiet, but is filled with the noise of mother's digestion, heartbeat, voice, and other voices from people nearby and sounds like music. The baby hears from the sixth month of development and is disturbed by sudden loud noises, which he or she reacts to by kicking furiously. Emotions from the mother, such as strong anger or fear, also prompt the kicking reaction. Because babies are so sensitive to their environment, some researchers are convinced that it is important for mothers to take care for themselves, not just physically but emotionally. A happy and relaxed mother, supported by a committed husband, helps her create a peaceful and comfortable environment for her unborn child. Social environment. In addition to the physical environment, each of us lives in a social environment, which is created by people. Each person in our lives, especially those close to us, contributes to a social environment. Families. The first and most important social environment is the families. Families influence our personalities, achievements, beliefs, values, attributes, and behaviors. Here's just one example. Sports. Some people are born with the genetic potential to be excellent athletes. At a very young age, they show good coordination, balance, flexibility, strength, and endurance. But can we predict which, if any of these talented people, will become a great gymnast, a star basketball player, or a famous runner? The family plays an important role in determining the answer to this question. For example, families might frequently attend athletic events, have no interest in sports, be unable to afford sports equipment, enjoy playing a variety of sports, value doing well in school much more than athletic achievement, encourage all members of the family to develop their talents. For many people, Wayne Gretzky is the greatest player of all time. He was naturally gifted at playing hockey, but his family also played an important role in his success. Wayne put on skates for the first time before he was 3. Every winter his father, Walter, made a backyard rink known as Wally Coliseum, where he taught Wayne and his brothers how to play and where Wayne skated for hours every day. One season when he was 10 years old, Wayne scored 378 goals and 120 assists in 85 games. As Walter said, Wayne had something extra special going for him in the hockey department, and right from the beginning I was prepared to nurture that along in whatever way I could. The family, however, won't be the only influence. Even with family support, a person may discover that he or she doesn't like competition, or doesn't want to spend all that time on training. It could also happen that, with very little support from the family, someone still manages to become an outstanding athlete. Friends. The influence of friends is not as strong of that as families, but it becomes more important as people grow up. In fact, when teenage students are asked what their favorite activity is, most of them say, hanging out with friends. Talking and laughing, confiding worries, sharing interests, cooperating on school projects, doing things together, arguing, making up after a fight, and having a lot of fun. These are all parts of the social environment created by friends. How does this environment influence you? Friends may introduce you to new interests, affect your behavior and your values. These are just some of the ways friends have an effect on each other, but the most important influence of friendships has to do with the question at the beginning of this theme. Who am I? Friendship is a peer relationship, which is quite different from a family relationship. Your relationship with the people in your class, your peer group, is a relationship of equals. But you come from different backgrounds and have a variety of gifts, personalities, and interests. Peer group relationships can help you learn more about yourself, your interests and personality, your strengths and weaknesses, how to stand up for yourself, how to balance your desire to fit in, and at the same time be true to yourself. Media. Media refers to various methods of communication that reach a wide variety of audience. For example, television, radio, newspapers, magazines, movies, books, internet, cell phones, and video games. Asked Sophia. My mother thinks TV is a bad influence. She disapproves of just about everything I want to watch. Too much violence, too much bad language. If I'm just watching a show she doesn't like, she keeps shouting, "You're going to rot your brain." It sort of ruins the fun. She also has a thing about advertising. If I talk about something I want, she says, "I suppose you saw it on TV." And I keep telling her that TV is just entertainment and doesn't affect me. Frank. Dear Frank, obviously your mother isn't a big fan of TV. Why don't you two sit down and figure out a solution? She's not preventing you from watching certain programs, just letting you know what she thinks. Perhaps you could agree on a list of programs she can live with, without negative comments, and a list of those she does not want you to watch. Does what's on TV influence people? Well, there's absolutely no doubt that television advertising does. Companies would spend billions of dollars every year if it didn't. The negative part of the influence is that you and everyone else are being encouraged to want more stuff, whether or not you need it. Are violence a bad influence? Seeing violence doesn't necessarily make you violent, but it does dull your sense of how horrible violence is in real life. It can also lead you to think that physical force is an acceptable way of solving problems. As for bad language, the more you hear about it, the more likely you are to use it, especially if you're angry or upset. Not a good habit. Sophia. Most people think of media as a source of information and entertainment. It is also, however, part of the social environment and plays a major influential role in our culture. Here are a few examples of both positive and negative influences. What do you think about them? Concerns about the natural environment must be taken seriously and lead to action. Many young people get involved in projects to help people in need. The right brands of clothing lead to fun and popularity. Many people with disabilities are fully participating in Canadian society. Musical lyrics with violent or sexual content are entertaining. The details of a celebrity's personal life, especially if they're scandalous, are amusing. Many young people find it insulting to be told that their opinions, purchases, and even their values are influenced by media. But the fact is that everyone, not just those who are young, is influenced by their social environment, and media is a part of that environment. Adolescents are particularly susceptible to the influence of media because they are in the process of figuring out who they are. At this stage in life, they are very open to media that provide information about growing up, fitting in, dealing with new emotions, and having successful relationships. In today's society, becoming a thoughtful consumer is a major challenge. Identical strangers. Elise Shine had always known that she was adopted, but she'd never searched for her birth parents. At the age of 33, she was living in Paris, far from her home in New York, and decided to begin the search. After about a year, she received a letter that included a piece of information that turned her life upside down. You were born at 12:51 p.m. as the younger of twin girls born to a 28-year-old Jewish woman. Soon after getting this astonishing news, Elise returned to New York to search for her twin sister. With the help of the adoption agency, she found her within days. Paula Bernstein, Elise's twin, was married, living in New York, and had a 2-year-old daughter. Like Elise, Paula had always known she was adopted, but the news she had a twin sister shocked her. At first, Elise and Paula met on the telephone, with many questions. Then they met in person, and recognized each other immediately. It was like seeing themselves in a mirror, but with slight differences. They discovered that they both shared an interest in film and writing, and had similar mannerisms and personalities. Yet, despite the same heredity, they were different. As they were growing up, they did not share family, friends, or experiences. The interactions of their genes with each of their environments had created two unique women. Several years after Elise and Paula met each other, they wrote a book together, Identical Strangers, about the reunion and search for the identity of their birth mother.